So, we're about to go into a conversation where you think through opportunities for you to be involved in the implementation of this. Now, what I've described so far are a lot of the national efforts, and I'll briefly touch on some of the state level efforts. But ultimately, I want to give you a few suggestions just simply to get the ball rolling. And many of you guys have already had many of these suggestions already. But a few suggestions for you to think through how you can use this national plan. First, a point of reference. The national plan is not suggesting that states or communities put down their existing plan and recreate a new one based entirely on this new national plan. More to the point, they are asking you to incorporate the work, incorporate the perspectives of the national plan into your existing work. As you write a new plan, and hopefully you have a course of action that you're working toward, but as you work toward implementing your plan, and as you change those things, include the perspective, include the strategies of the national plan in them. That's something that we're doing from the state perspective. As we are thinking through the next state plan for physical activity, nutrition, and obesity prevention, we'll be considering the recommendations that are already in existence with this document. You will hopefully be very pleased to know that the current North Carolina plan is very much in line with this new national plan. We address some of the very same strategies and the very same tactics, and are actively working in a direction that's very much aligned with this new national effort. The North Carolina plan comes to a conclusion in 2012, and we're actually initiating some processes now to begin rewriting the new plan. And of course, we'll keep the new National Physical Activity Plan in mind as we do so. That same kind of thing can be done for you. Not only is this body today, but you as an organization, for the organizations that you represent. So think about your perspective, either from Parks and Recreation, or from a fitness perspective, or from education, or fill in the blank. The agencies that you represent also have plans. You can consider these national plan activities, some of which are very ownable, if I can use that word, at a local level. So think about how you can build those national plan activities into your organization's work, as well as the work of this council. Some of them, as mentioned in this first bullet, is to inform and support your existing plans. You may also want to think through your workforce. As you hire people, are you hiring people that can address these issues? Are you hiring people that have the proper background to address these issues, or will you train them to do that? Think about the partners that you've got at the table, and you often hear about having the unusual or the non-traditional partners. By unusual partner, I don't mean the guy sitting beside you that smells a little bit like a nursing home and has that strange growth. I'm talking about the unusual as folks, in terms of folks that you don't always work with. Most of us tend to go to the same folks for the same thing over and over and over again, and we need to get out of that box a little bit. So, for example, I don't think that I heard anybody here that addresses transportation, for example, land use, transportation, or those types of issues. You may want to consider having someone as part of this group that represents those issues. Business and industry. Now, some of you work in fitness business, but are you representing the business mindset, the industry mindset, or are you representing more the fitness side of things? So think about the makeup of your group is just another thing to keep in your mind. Advocacy. There's a great deal of opportunity for you to advocate to change policies, and that happens at all levels. And I am drawing a distinction between advocacy and lobbying. There's a legal limit on how much you may be able to lobby if you work with using public funds. However, and depending upon what business you work with, your business may have limits on whether you can lobby or not. As an individual, as a citizen, you have all the opportunities that anybody has. So don't forget that you are a citizen also, not just representing an organization. But drawing a distinction between lobbying and advocacy, let me also point out that advocacy is effectively educating decision makers. And you may allow them to make their own conclusions that may happen to align with yours. But educating them on an issue is not necessarily the same thing as asking them to do something related to regulations of the bill. So lobbying would be asking a legislator or a council member, for example, to support a particular bill or to oppose a particular bill. Advocacy would be informing them of the issues surrounding that bill. Okay? Just drawing a distinction there. And then, of course, promoting tools and resources, and we'll talk just a little bit more about that in a second. Monitoring, depending on whether you get into evaluation or not, evaluation and or surveillance, you may or may not want to consider some of the recommendations of this plan. So talk about this. Basically use this national plan when you're doing your work. It will support you, and it may even validate your work, validate your efforts to a point where if you are having problems getting support for your advocacy messages, for example, you may be able to point out that the work that you're doing is aligned with the national efforts and essentially sell your idea as being part of a bigger issue. I would also remind you that you can use that same argument in saying that you're part of not only the state work, but part of the national work. I've talked a little bit about this already, so I'm not going to go into it more, but I would recommend if you're intrigued by the workforce development concept, you may want to look at some of the core competencies that are outlined and described on the NASPAF website at National Society of Physical Activity Practitioners in Public Health, NSPAPPH.org. They describe core competencies, and you can incorporate that into your work plans or into your job descriptions. There's also a credential associated with that. The ACSM and this national organization have developed a Physical Activity Public Health Specialist credential. So you may be familiar with ACSM credentials or ACE credentials, things of that nature. Another one for work in this area. Talked about this a little bit already. Think outside your normal box when you're working and you're developing partnerships and working with them. Fully utilize the ones that you've got. So many times we've got great partnerships and we just simply talk about the same issue every time, and we don't really dig deep and think about how we can best use those partnerships. We've talked also a lot about advocacy as well. I want to really encourage you to think about bigger issues. Educating the individual about their own fitness needs, about their own physical activity needs, about their own health needs, very important. But don't stop there. We've been doing that for a long time, and it has a limited ability to change behavior if someone is not already intrinsically motivated to do it. Think bigger than that. There are a lot of resources. I want to point out to you at eatsmartmovemorenc.com, as well as the Physical Activity Society's website. There are a lot of resources for you addressing all of these sectors. I also encourage you to evaluate your work. It's a very important process that's outlined in the plan. Bottom line, if you don't know that you're making progress, it's hard to argue that anybody needs to support your work. Always monitor the process, usually monitor outcome, and pay attention to your impacts, positive and negative. So, one plug here, or two plugs. One for Eat Smart Move More North Carolina, that being North Carolina's movement, statewide movement to address physical activity, nutrition, and obesity prevention. Two awesome websites that Sheree and her team manage, with the input of many other partners at the table, such as WakeMed, who's a great partner at the table. Lots of information on programs, on data, on news, messaging, funding, fill in the blank. So I really encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. And also the Physical Activity Society as well. Mentioned before some of the credentialing opportunities, the core competencies that you can build into your job descriptions, resource matrix, professional development opportunities, and of course, very engaged in national and state level advocacy. So, with that in mind, I want to pause and ask for any questions that you may have about the national plan, and then we'll break into more specific conversation about what we in Wake County can do to embrace and